Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime Making 3, and today I'm going to be giving you part 22 of What If Naruto Universe Had Quirks. Remember to get this one to 100 likes as usual, share this to all of your friends in your social media platform, and also guys, don't forget to go ahead and check out the other channels. Yes, I indeed have 4 of them which I post What If on every single day for you guys to enjoy. Links will be down in the description, so go ahead, check them out, and yeah, enjoy. And don't forget to turn on the bell notification to see exactly when I post, because I do post a hell of a lot. So without further ado or wasting any more time, what do you say we jump right into this brand new episode? Begin now guys. So the last spot we left off, Minato sent a couple of the experimental kids towards where Naruto was. The first two had a bonding quirk that they used to incinerate everything. However, Naruto rematerialized from the water. As his body after absorbing the sandbite, he gained the ability to bend and twist water to his command. The problem was, one of the children there had a quirk that pumped a virus in the air, and Naruto's body was pulled within that virus as it was coursing through him. Said virus was deadly in a wide vicinity, but focused on one target, it was an immediate kill. But Naruto was strong enough to push it away, his body healing rapidly, but he was also getting weaker. Minato was using one of them to see through his eyes, as he could go anywhere and look over any nation. The problem was, now that Naruto was weakened, this was their chance, but he was not fully down yet, so they attacked him with everything they got. One of them were able to swim under the water as he took on a fish-like appearance. The other one possessed a tremendous amount of control over electricity. The girl that was there had telekinesis ability, as it was powerful in many different ways, as she was able to drag Naruto down and slam him into the earth. One of them there could turn into a ball of deadly spike. The very essence crushed the earth with Naruto inside. What followed was a brutal, destructive battle, as the island itself was torn apart. Pure chaos and destruction as the land was breaking and torn. Everything was collapsing in on itself, as they were bashing and beating away at Naruto. He was actually being destroyed. They were destroying him from the inside out, knowing that they had to erase him completely to get rid of him. For a moment there, Naruto almost lost it. He almost slipped away until he remembered everything. His memories flooding back to him. The past, the hate, the humiliation, the loss. It caused Naruto to snap. Bloodlusted, he got up. This time though, he was ferocious, as he was basically a skeleton, but yet, as his body reformed, he ripped, he tore, he gouged. He was a monster, tearing through everything that was in front of him. What followed was a gruesome, bloody scene. The viewer that Minato was using had to run away with the virus. Boy, Minato wanted those two because they were very important to his plans. He couldn't afford to make Naruto kill them. The girl remained behind as usual telekinesis to save Naruto in the island. However, his power started to explode outwards, as he ended up exploding the entire island with a tremendous amount of force. As Naruto chased after them, they tried to run. They tried to put him down, but he tore them apart. It was brutal, it was deadly. He ripped them limb from limb, showing how inhumane he had become. As Naruto gouged and ripped, everything was just so gruesome. Minato was furious after that as he lost touch with the viewer. He was upset. He was angry. The viewer and also the virus individual was very important to him, as he wanted to use them for future well, domination, but now, Minato was furious as he thought about the one person that he could use to take Naruto down one-on-one, and that was X. Not revealing the quirk that X had, however, the problem was X was a bit unstable, and Minato feared Naruto actually winning against X and gaining his quirk, which would be the death of them all. X was extremely powerful, however, it seems that he had no choice. The more power Naruto got, the more indestructible and invincible he got, and they were going to lose. However, as Naruto was left, his body was still dematerializing at a fast rate. The poison had catch on to his tail beast chakra inside of him, and now it was destroying him from the inside. That is when he was finally able to contact with Misaka, as she was currently on a mission. She was shocked. Tears came to her eyes as she told her that he was dying. As she was crying, he was surprised. It was at that moment that he truly realized just how much she cared for him, and strangely enough how much he cared for her, knowing that he was going to die, and he didn't want her to suffer. It pained him, yes, but there was nothing that he could do about it. The mindscape broke between them as she found herself back in the woods where she was. When she got back towards the village, Konan wanted to question her about what happened and her contact with Naruto, but she finally broke in tears and told her that he was dead. Konan was shocked to hear that. As for Naruto, his heart had stopped. However, a moment later, it started to reactivate once again. The thing was, the origin of Quirks were shaded in mystery. Yes, no one fully knew the truth. Unlike normal Jinchurikis, when Naruto absorbed a Biju, he did not keep it inside his body. It broke down and became one with him. So now this event caused him to evolve. As Naruto started to change, his body started to heal. The tail beast chakra merging completely with him. However, problems struck. As the team from the stone was nearby, Kurosaki couldn't believe it. Out of everything, she never could have imagined this. They brought him back. Right now, Misaka believed that Naruto was dead, but he was far from it. Sometime later, Naruto woke up as he was chained and tied up, a machine suppressing him. An arrow pierced right through his left eye. As he looked up towards the individual standing there, as he did not even know who the hell it was, she got pissed off and struck him across the face, causing him more pain as his body was heavily suppressed. Kurosaki had a wicked grin on her face. She was gonna make sure that he suffered. So yeah guys, basically let's left off, you guys can switch across the play, check it out for yourself. So yeah, without further ado or waste no more time, let's jump right into this brand new episode, shall we? Begin now guys. We begin this episode at the Hidden Rain. As Nagato sat in his chambers, Konan had informed him about what happened with their daughter, and he didn't have any right to be upset about it. For one, she did not know anything about the Akatsuki and Naruto having problems. 2. He understood what it felt like when you care for someone deeply. As he lowered his head at that, thinking about the past, life for him had not been easy in the slightest. No, it was not. Growing up in the Hidden Rain, things were chaotic. Yes, especially for those who did not possess quirks. The thing was, children that were not born with quirks, or quirks that were useful to their village, were used like pawns. Events that would definitely get them killed. They would be placed in those situations. So yes, life was horrible for him. Because the early stage of his life, when one is to awaken a quirk, he did not awaken any. His parents, bless their souls, loved him with everything they got. They tried to keep him a secret. They tried to keep the fact that he did not possess a quirk a secret. He did not understand. The both of them were born with quirks and he did not. At the time he was furious, upset with himself, that he was a problem. The both of them always told him that he wasn't a problem. He was their special boy. However, they found out. Yes, they found out. They came that night. His parents tried to flee. thinking that he'll be the best choice. After all, they would not allow their son to be used for military purposes or whatever, just because he was not born with a quirk. They fought, and their life was ended for him. He saw the light left their eyes as they told him to run. The rage that had built up inside of him was just so great. The next thing he knew, his eyes felt like they were being ripped apart. He released this unconventional force that turned the bodies of the perpetrators into mincemeat. He was angry, he was livid. He destroyed everything around him. He destroyed the house, even his own parents' corpse, in his fit of rage. After that, he had passed out. When he finally came to, he was alone, the rain pouring down on him. He felt like giving up after that. Yes, he roamed the empty, dreaded place. There wasn't much left for him. He didn't see the purpose of going on despite possessing these abilities now. Where were they when he needed them? So he was gonna give up, end it all. That was when he was found by this girl. At first he thought that she was an angel. She saved his life by grabbing his hand as he attempted to jump right off the cliff. She pulled him up. She asked him if he was crazy. He broke down. She told him her name. Her name was Conan. She had a brother. His name was Yaiko. She brought him back. They weren't alone though. Her brother Yaiko was not born with a quirk. And for that, the village, the hierarchy, was gonna use him as they see fit. Placed him in a war that he couldn't even fight. So she stood up for him. She ran away with him. Their parents had died, and they were in the orphanage. They always stick together. They rally the other children that were deemed not special as they gather together. As the years went by, a lot of them fall. However, they strive through. They kept on pushing until they start to gain actual power. He realized that he was special. These eyes that he had, they were eyes of myth, legends. The Rinnegan, power that can create and destroy at the same time. His body was also fitting for it, allowing him to control it with great ease. He gained quirks that he never thought he would ever gain. He was finally powerful. Hanzo, the man that had gave all the laws and rules for the quirkless to be used, that was their main target, to get rid of him. However, they were all placed in a situation. Conan got captured. Things were bad. Their men were beaten and down. He had the power, however. She was captured. Over the time, he came to love her. He also treated Yaiko like his own brother. Hanzo gave them a choice. Yaiko did not hesitate to give his life for his sister, telling him that he was the one in charge. With his eyes, he can bring a true difference. That single moment of everyone letting their guard down, he leapt into action. What followed was him taking on Hanzo and his entire force. A battle that reigned. It was chaotic. He tapped into the full might of the Rinnegan, using quirks that he never used before. The Rinnegan was truly a marvelous gift. Him and Hanzo duked it out right there and then. He ripped him apart. He did not stop until his hands were bloody. After breaking the man down, he plunged his hands over and over into his face until there was nothing left. When he stood to his feet, all high and mighty, he told them all to get to their knees. All of Hanzo's supporters had no choice but to bow to him. As he took control, all of Hanzo's loyalists, he shredded them, he ripped them apart, he decimated them. He took control of the village through and through. It wasn't long after that when he met this man, who claimed to be Mother Uchiha. He did not believe him. No, he did not. However, the man had information that he did not have. For now though, he would go on with his ruse. He told him that his fight with the first Hokage led to him losing much of his abilities. That is why he was so weakened now. However, with his help, they could bring a difference to this world. After doing some more research, he found out that the man was right, and he could actually save this world. A dream that they had when they were much younger. A dream to fix this chaotic world. Just because one is born with a superior quirk and just because one is not born with a quirk. Sometime later, he had his beautiful daughter, who they named after his mother. He released a sigh, and now she was heartbroken. He had no idea that the relationship that they had was so deep, just over communicating with each other in a shared mindscape. However, he knew how he felt back then. He knew how he felt for Conan. So, he was not too surprised about that. Conan had told him that their daughter had liked the boy, but he brushed it off. Their path would never cross again, he thought. But now the boy was dead, and the tail beasts were gone. That screwed up a big part of his plan. Right now, everything had to be put on hold with the death of Naruto and Mikaze. A few things had to change up. Time skip. News spread like wildfire through the elemental nation. The terrorist, known as Naruto, who has been going around attacking nations, has been killed. No one knew where the source came from. However, news was spread around the elemental nation that he was finally killed. It had been over 3 weeks. There has been no sightings of him. The last attack that he did was on Kiri. Other than that, there has been no other attacks. Despite that though, Kumo had its borders tightened. Its security was on full force. They would not be tricked in the slightest. Raikage would not be tricked. He did not believe the news one bit, as he thought that it was just a way for them to let their guard down, and then he would strike. So the borders were tightened. Everyone was prepared just in case. However, as the 3 weeks passed, there was nothing. No sightings of him, nothing at all. Given the rate that he was going, they expected to be attacked by now, but everyone was safe. People start to wonder if it was truly the reality of the situation. Was he actually dead? They start to wonder to themselves. However, some people were not taking this too well. At Konoha, Kushina looked down towards her baby girl that was sleeping. She did not know how to feel about this. Her son was dead, and that was bad, yes. However, given what he was doing, given the actions that he was taking, was that really a bad thing? He would have come after them, no doubt, and tried to harm them, and tried to... She looked down at her sleeping daughter. She shook her head. He was gone now. Yes, it was a complicated feeling. However, her family was finally safe, and she was okay with that. That her family was safe. However, not everyone was taking this news all too well. Menma sat on top of the monument. His face was frozen in an angry expression. He was not pleased. How could he be pleased? In fact, he was downright furious. The right to kill him has been taken away. Menma looked toward his arm that looked completely normal. However, he knew deep down that it was not. He remembered being beaten, his pride was destroyed that day. And he would never get the opportunity to make him pay for what he did, because he was now dead. They had no idea who was able to finally take him down. But Menma was not pleased with the results. He wanted to be the one to end his life, to finish him, but he failed. As he always did. He was just a goddamn failure, he thought to himself. As he lay back on the rock, looking up towards the heavens, there was so much anger inside of him, boiling up. And that was not good for anyone, because anger like that tend to explode. Meanwhile, Mito was out with her friends. Yes, she didn't know how to feel about the situation. She figured that keeping herself occupied would be the best course. Keeping herself busy. As he was finally dead, their family no longer have to worry about anyone coming after them. However, she knew certain members of her family were not taking this too well. But all they could do now was just go on, like everything was normal, and back to normal, yes. As for Tsunade, she was at a bar. She wanted to get revenge as well for the death of her teammate. However, now that was all over, all she could do now was drink. As for Minato, he was on the ground, in a secret location. In front of him was a test tube, a large one to be exact. The facial area part was covered, so you could not tell what was inside of it. However, on the label, there was one single letter, X. There were several tubes running towards it, with liquids going inside. Minato sat down as he typed away at the machine in front of him. He came to a stop as he swung around in his chair. He released a heavy breath. He did not know what to think. After the last encounter that he had with his biological son, he doubted that there was anyone out there that could take him on. The virus that was implanted into his system, it should be broken away and destroyed in a matter of hours. However, Minato was not so sure himself because Naruto biology had been completely changed for the better. So he doubted that it would take more than a few minutes exact, around 30 minutes, for him to adapt and destroy the virus. The problem now was, who out there could have killed him, and who was telling this rumor around? That he had no idea about, and it was starting to bother him because he didn't know if it was real or not. If it was real, this was good. No more problems that he had to worry about. However, if it was fake, this was bad. They had no idea when he was going to attack, or when he was going to make his move. Minato also feared the problem of Naruto gaining all the tail pieces. If the other nations decided to let their guard down, and he was able to collect all those pieces, things would be bad for everyone. However, he did not know what was going on, so he had to find out. So he sent some of his best searching group to go and search and find out what the hell was going on. Meanwhile, at the Hidden Stone, in a dark underground chamber, locked away, completely barred from the outside world, painful grunts could be heard, and heavy breathing. She finally stepped back. Her fists were coated in blood. Her knuckles were bruised. Her face was drenched with sweat. She was breathing heavily. It was none other than Kurosaki. As her clothing was stained in blood, looking forward in front of her was the tied up Naruto, his body shrouded in darkness. This place was to cut him off from the outside world, to make it seem like he was buried and forgotten. However, the pain that she suffered, the humiliation, the scar that would never heal, even now as she ran her fingers across the scar that gouged in her face, she stepped forward as she kicked him across the face, his head snapping back as he crashed into the wall. His body was locked down and chained. He could not go a few feet away from the wall, and his hands were suppressed. He could barely raise them, his legs strained down to the point that he could just hunch himself upwards. Other than that, and moving from the wall, there was nothing else that he could do. He spat as blood came from his mouth, which he was coated in as well. He was wearing no shirt, only pants, black pants, no footwear at all. His body was scarred and disfigured because of the place that he was in. Not to mention the machine behind him. Almost all nations had this machine. It was a device that created a long time ago. It was able to suppress quirks. The ninjas had turned it into cuffs, where they could cuff their enemies and suppress their quirks. The problem was you had to get close enough to place it on them, and it took around 5 seconds for it to be completely sealed off. However, the machine, this was a full force. The Tishikage had this room created for the most terrible that they hunt, from their village being mostly missing names. He never thought that one day he would have to use it on the quirk stealer himself. However, it seems that they were just lucky. Onoki had saw the behavior that his granddaughter was taking. She had turned violent. Even he started to want to take her off the force when he saw how she started to behave The more time passed and the more she did not get her revenge as she wanted. And he didn't want to strip it away from her. So, she was allowed to vent out her anger in here. After all, none of them here really care for Naruto one bit. The only thing that she wasn't able to do was kill him. Death was not for him, because they were plotting on using him. For the past 3 weeks, they have been running tests. They have been experimenting, trying to find out what made him tick, what made him different from the others, what made him able to completely swallow people quirk. However, that was not coming through as much as Onoki thought. So there was something else. He wanted the boy to be used as a pawn. The problem was, his body was so protected, internally and externally, that it was hard. They want to completely rewire him, to change his whole perception on everything, his mind, his ability to think. They want to turn him into a mindless pawn. Kurosaki was actually helping them in that endeavor as well, to see how much he could take, pain-wise. They locked him up in here to see how durable his body was. And it was rather shocking because the more she hit, the more she punched, the more she stabbed, the less noise she heard. To this point, he literally stopped making a single sound. It was like her attacks did nothing to him, and that truly pissed her off. Yes. They had thought that he himself knew something, why his quirk worked the way he did. So they figured allowing her to torture him would give them a way for him to talk. However, he did not talk. The only thing that he did, which pissed her off even more, was he glanced up towards her and smiled. 2 arrows materialized beside her as she thrust them forward. They stabbed right into his arms, pinning him to the wall. She created 2 more and slashed him across the face as blood splattered everywhere. Given the fact that the machine was literally embedded into him, on his back there were several cables running directly into his flesh that made the machine suppress his quirk completely. So she was not affected by that. "Still feel like smiling at me?" she asks. As she raised her fist, however, she was stopped. She turned to see a doctor behind her. "It's time." She frowned. However, she had her fill for today. "Don't worry. I'll see you again very soon," she said. "And I'll make it even worse next time." Once again, he smiled at her. However, the doctor came over and injected something into his neck. His head started to bob before his head collapsed forward. The doctor called out as 2 men came in. They completely removed all of the equipment from him, unbinding him before they took him and placed him on a stretcher. They strapped him down tightly, placing cuffs on his hands. As it attached to the stretcher itself, it started to glow, showing that it was activated. They also made sure to secure him tightly despite the fact that he was placed in an unconscious state. They just had to be secure. She went and got herself cleaned up. This is the happiest she's been in a very long time. As she cleaned herself, the hot water washing all her anger away. She's been so frustrated, so humiliated, since that awful event that scarred her face. She felt like she could not walk in her own village anymore. She was a pride and joy, granddaughter of the Kishikage, next in line to take his seat as the Kishikage. And yet, she was brutalized. Her face was scarred, she was beaten and left, struggling to stay alive. It damaged and broke something inside of her, something that was not able to heal until she finally got revenge. However, now she was getting her revenge. Fulfilling her anger, it was easing her back into her life that she lived before. Much of the hate, much of the anger was washing away. Once she was finished, she got dressed. She made her way towards the area as she arrived to see her grandfather floating as he looked through the glass mirror watching inside. She arrived as she stood beside him. As he noticed the bandage around her hands, she was the first one to speak. "What's going on?" "It was as I thought. As she looked towards him confused, he looked towards the doctor. As the man spoke up, it seems, the more you hurt him, the stronger he becomes. What? She said. But I thought his power was suppressed. I'm not sure about it myself, but his body, it's not functioning as a normal body should. I believe it has to do with his quirk. She stomped her feet angrily. So you're telling me that the more he suffers, the stronger he becomes? Exactly. There's no telling what, or if he has a limitation. The doctor said. That truly pissed her off to no end. Realizing that it did not matter how much he hurt him, he will never suffer as much as she wanted him to suffer. Damn it, she thought to herself, clenching her fist tight. Her hand was placed on her shoulder as she looked over towards her grandfather. He opened his mouth to say something until Naruto's eyes snapped open. The doctor fell over, dropping his clipboard that he was writing a few things on. They heard the fall, causing the both of them to turn. Kurasuki's eyes went wide as she saw that grin plastered on his face. And then, boom! A violent blast went off. Flashback. A few minutes earlier, as Naruto was once again having the crap beaten out of him, he simply enjoyed it, sitting where he was as he felt her knuckles and her arrows piercing into his skin. The machine was making his body tender and weak. It was also feeding him by the tubes to make sure that he did not die. However, he was feeling it, the difference. Ever since he almost died, facing off against the children of Minato, he felt the change. The tail beast chakra, Itachi had told him that they were all linked together, and he felt it as well the moment he siphoned some of the One-Tail's chakra during the exam. The problem was now, they had not merged together. Whatever the tail beast was before, it was vastly superior to what they are now. And since that defeat, his body was able to break their chakra down, and it was able to bring them together, turning and twisting them into something rather violent, something that hunger for more, something that thirsts for more. And it would not stop until it gained all of them. However, Naruto had enough control because of all the experiments done on him by Orochimaru, not to mention his help from his own bastard of a father, to make his body strong, durable, enhanced, and not to mention the quirk of All Might, which had rise up to 70%, and it was rising even more. The past 3 weeks, it was able to get to 75. It was rising faster than ever. The more he could feel, the more his body expressed. Their stupid machine locked away his power, yes, they thought they did. However, he was not sure if he was fully human anymore. His very essence had been turned into something powerful. Even now, he himself was suppressing the changes, because he could feel them coming, but he suppressed them all. He did not want to give away anything. For the past 3 weeks, he wanted to see how far his body could be pushed. He wanted to see how far his body could adapt. So he allowed them to beat him. He allowed them to torture him. A part of him allowed them to do it as well, because he knew what will happen after he get free. He knew what will happen to them. He knew what he will do. Usually he took the tail beasts and leave. However, not this village. He could sense the tail beasts, he could tell exactly where they are. He took the past 3 weeks to pinpoint their location. It doesn't matter where they go now. Anywhere across the world he could find any one of them. His senses has gotten so better that he knew where every single beast lied, and he hungered for them all. Another reason why he allowed them to inflict pain on himself was because of his 2 first friends, Ami and Kyo. He never liked to disappoint them. Hurting them felt like he was hurting himself, and that made him suffer on the inside. However, this was not about them. It was about Mikasa. He was dying, and he could feel how much she was suffering. It was like her heart was being ripped apart, and he too felt pain that he hasn't felt in a long while. It has been a long while since he cared for a single person, but now he truly felt pain for what he did to her. Yes, he felt horrible for what he did to her, for how he treated her. And even in his final moments, she cried for him. There wasn't much people that would ever, well, no one else that would do that for him. She was the only one. And all that he's put her through when she was just trying to be there for him. He had closed himself off to everyone because of the events that his life had taken. However, she was different. And it's about time that he realized that. So there was a lot of reasons why. He's been here for the past 3 weeks. But these machines could not hold him anymore. He did not classified as a human anymore. The chakra inside of him, there was no beast inside of him. Their consciousness was not there. Their chakra had fortified through his body. He was no longer human anymore. He had literally become a tail beast. So these machines, they meant nothing to him. His features had not changed because he did not allow them. He had more control over his body than anyone else. And now, Naruto snapped open his eyes on the table as the doctor fell over. He lifted his head up as he looked towards Kurosaki. Her eyes went widen. Oniki's eyes widened as well. That is when Naruto expelled the power out of him. Outside, people were going about their daily business, only for their bodies to be thrown. As the facility was underground, several people were launched, heads were being split open as they slammed into all sorts of things. Bodies were being crushed. The force had blasted them away hard. "Are you alright?" The voice of Onoki came out. As Kurosaki blinked, she saw the blast approaching, and then everything went dark as she realized her grandfather had saved her. "Yeah, I'm alright," she said. Onoki waved his hand as a rock dome around them melted away, completely under his control. Onoki had an elemental quirk. Yes, it seems rather ironic, however, his quirk was manipulation of the earth. This was no normal manipulation though. He could twist, bend, and create. There was a reason why he was a Tishikage, and he has been for the longest time now. His quirk was extremely powerful. Onoki looked around as he glanced upward, seeing that they were on the ground. He reached out as he grabbed Kurosaki by the arm and floated up with her. Naruto was standing in mid-air, unbothered by it all. His eyes were different. They were now completely black, with a red circle around the pupil in the center. On the red circle there was 3 megatamas, 3 representing the tail beasts that he's already gathered. There was also 2 tiny bumps on his forehead as well. His hair is also grown out as he stopped holding back the changes. This was just a fraction of what is to come. As Naruto could feel the 2 Jinchurikis heading towards his location, as a rock bullet came from the earth and smashed right into his forehead. It exploded on contact as Naruto's head was blown back. However, he did not fall unconscious. He simply smiled. "You know," he said as he started to flex his arm and rotate his shoulder, "you guys should have killed me when you had the opportunity." "Because now," said Naruto, as he looked down towards Kurosaki. Several arrows formed around her as she stood on 2, so her grandfather did not have to hold her anymore. "There's a second chance for everything," she said to him, as Naruto merely smiled. That smile pissed her off as she clenched her fists. "You know what? I'm actually not gonna kill you," he said. That caused her to raise her eyebrow. "You tortured me. You beat the living crap out of me because you wanted me to suffer. All this time you've been holding on to an anger that I have completely forgotten. At first I didn't even know who the hell you are." She shot 2 arrows towards him, but they simply went through him as his body turned to sand. I did not even know what was your problem with me when I saw you again. Yet, you chose to remind me in the most painfulest way possible by gouging out my eyes. For that, I'm not gonna kill you either. I'm just gonna make you suffer. Onoki floated in front of her. The option to keep you alive was to use you as a puppet and a tool. However, now that you're free, I see no other reason to keep you alive because I know what you intend to do. And you will not harm this village in any way possible, Onoki said. Is that right, old man? Said Naruto. Yes, it is, child, Onoki said. You have no idea what you're up against. As Naruto felt the ear start to shake, the ear itself even started to shake. It was like the man had the control over the entire village. But Naruto was not surprised. Two giant arms erupted from the ground made from stone. They floated towards Naruto at blinding speed. Naruto twisted and landed on one, only for a spike to tear right through his chest. However, his body had turned into water. He slipped down the arm and arrived in front of Onoki, only for him to see an arrow coming from his left side and one from his right. He then noticed that the earth beneath him shot upwards, and he was right in the center. And a strange force field appeared as several ninjas arrived on the scene. Everything converged and smashed right into him. Kurosaki floated above as she looked down, wondering if that got him. She had to tilt her head fast. However, she was not fast enough as her cheek was grazed. A tiny silver ball had sliced across her cheek. She heard screams as several people from her village were blasted through, their skull being torn apart, limbs being blasted off, their bodies being reduced to pieces, as the tiny silver balls were under his control, and there was a lot of them. Behind you! They heard one of the ninjas shouted as he had two massive eyes to scan the entire place. Onoki turned around as he saw the water form solidifying behind him as Naruto outstretched his hand that was sharp, about to tear right through the man. However, Onoki was yanked out of the way by an unseen force, only to see a quirk user that had his hand extended, releasing an unseen tentacle that grabbed his leader and pulled him away as the ear was sliced by Naruto's hand. Take him down! One of the ninjas shouted, now in mid-ear. Hundreds of attacks, everything that could be thrown, had hit right into Naruto. Everything was crushing and pushing, trying to destroy him in mid-ear. However, when the village stopped shaking down below from the force, as both Jinchurikis appeared, they expected to see what was left of his remains. However, the large-eyed individual looked around, only for his head to be split open. Shocked, everyone turned as Naruto stood on top of the building, looking at all of them. He then brought his hand down. Hundreds of ice spikes erupted from the earth. Screams could be heard as Onoki flew forward, creating two massive trenches. As he used the made-up rocks to shot rock bullets towards Naruto, they blast through the sky at immense speed. One of them could tear right through the human's body as Naruto floated upwards and started to run. The ninjas chased after him. Kurosaki tried to go, but her grandfather stopped her. She was angry by that, but the man was serious. He told her to stay behind and make sure everyone here was okay and rally the ones that he could use to help fight this monster. Onoki was realizing the traumatic mistake he made of capturing this boy and believing that he could hold him. He had to stop him as he flew as fast as he could, but he could not catch up with Naruto. Down below he saw the two Jinchurikis. He floated down towards them. This is no time for holding back, he said. The moment he's out of the village perimeter, the moment it is safe, transform and blow him to Kingdom Come. Do you understand, he said. The both of them nodded as they raced forward. Hundreds of shinobi there for backup. As Naruto landed outside of the village, there was a smile on his face. Just a bit more, he thought to himself. Meanwhile, underground, inside of the destroyed facility where Naruto was being kept, there was a clone. A wood clone that Naruto had left behind. It was sitting down in a meditative pose. Its eyes were closed. As its hands were on the ground, it was doing something. Something big. On the upside though, Kurosaki was making sure everyone get back to their feet. The wounded was being taken as she took charge. This was what it feels like to be a Kage, making sure the village is safe. As she gave orders, everyone followed her lead, without a second thought. As she told the remaining shinobis to go out and defend the village. As she gave help where she could. They couldn't let that bastard get away, but she wanted to be the one to kill him, to end him once and for all and finally feel satisfied with everything. However, she could not run away from her job that she was given. Damn it, she thought, as she hurried everyone along. Meanwhile, Onoki floated downwards. Big mistake of staying behind. You should have at least tried to run away. And who said I was running, said Naruto. As two people flanked him on the right and on the left. The remaining shinobis were given the order by Onoki to stay behind. They would get caught up in the crossfire if they had jumped right in. As Naruto stood there as calm as ever. Two people, one on his right, one on his left, and Onoki above him. The one on his right was Han. The one on his left was Roshi, respective holders of the tail beasts inside of them. Han had a steam quirk. This wasn't any normal steam quirk though. As he released steam out of his body, there was tiny holes over his hands. The steam quickly blanketed the entire place, covering the other people as well. However, they were unaffected. Han was able to feel his people inside and also feel his opponent inside as well. He clenched his fists. Naruto's entire body was entrapped in a bubble of steam. It started to increase in temperature, trapping him inside. Melt, Han said in a gruff voice, as the vicinity around Naruto started to melt away. It was reducing his body down to nothing. But despite that, Naruto did not move, as he looked at his hands to see his hands being melted off. Underneath the flesh was chakra, pure raw, confined chakra, as he could now tell the inner difference of his body. His skin was stitching back together faster than the steam could actually melt him. As Naruto clenched and opened his fists, that is when he stomped the ground. It exploded. Han had to guard himself. Roshi jumped in front of Han because the stones blocked his view. Roshi's entire body became magma, as Naruto's fist buried through his stomach. His body then solidified as he grabbed Naruto by the head. Roshi then started to apply pressure as he tried to squeeze and pop Naruto's head like a melon. However, Naruto opened his mouth as a sonic wave escaped from his throat. Roshi screamed out as blood exploded out of his nose and eyes, and ears as well, the force hitting him dramatically. He was forced to release Naruto as Naruto ripped his hand out of him, leaving a gaping hole in his stomach area. He then drove his skull and slammed it into Roshi's skull, throwing him back into Han, who caught him. Han grabbed him and leaped upwards as thousands of spikes lifted out of the earth and rained down on Naruto. Naruto spun both of his hands as they created massive vortex that twist and turned the spikes. Onoki kept on applying them though. Onoki clenched his fist as the ground underneath Naruto melted into mud, causing his legs to sink. It then solidified, trapping him there. Two chains made from mud grabbed both of his arms, pinning him down. Onoki then created a giant mallet out of the earth as he dropped it. Boom! However, he felt the chains shattered. Underneath the mallet, Onoki was shocked as he applied more pressure. However, Naruto held it up. The ground underneath him started to crack, his legs breaking through the earth. He grinned as he sunk his hands inside. He then started to tear. Onoki was shocked as Naruto ripped it apart and threw the larger side towards the forces. Onoki flew forward as he caught it though, with ease, and threw it back towards Naruto. Before it could reach him though, it broke apart and turned into a long, jagged spike. Naruto tilted his head as it stabbed into the ground, tearing it apart. His vision was then blocked by steam as it rushed into his eyes, blinding him. With that done, the ground under him split open as he started to fall. Roshi, now recovered, leaped upwards. He opened his mouth and spewed a horrendous amount of magma, swallowing and bathing Naruto inside. Onoki slammed his hands together as the ground shut close with a massive thud. He placed his hand down as he started to sweat, trying to contain the magma and Naruto inside as he felt the force. "You're not leaving," he said. He pushed down as the ground further sunk deep below. As Naruto's body ought to be cooking by now, melting away, the only way to actually kill this person is to get rid of his entire body. As both Jinchurikis jumped away, the forces were far away enough. "Do it now!" Onoki shouted. Upon saying that, both of them transformed. Tail Beast bombs started to gather, lava and also steam mixing in between. Before they blasted, Onoki flew away as the entire place exploded. A violent force, he raised his hand as a massive wall, as long as his village perimeters rose up and blocked the aftermath. He stood there in mid-air holding himself as all of his people were behind that wall protected. It started to crack by the force, but they were still protected. As he kept it up, he started to sweat a bit, exerting himself like this. He was not a young man anymore, but it had to be done. There is no possible way that he could survive something like that. When the dust and smoke started to clear away, Onoki floated overhead as the two-tailed beasts stood there still in their full form, not moving. As Onoki floated downwards, when he saw something in the rubble, it was a head. The head of Naruto. It was turned over. Onoki smirked as he realized that it was done. He started to float downwards until the head flipped around. Before he could move, the eyes turned red and a beam shot from both. Onoki cried out as it ripped through his stomach and through his shoulder as well. As he fell, both tailed beasts turned. They drive their tails down into the earth, trying to crush said head. However, it flew upwards. Onoki's body was safely caught by the fourth tail as he held him calmly in his hand. The monkey leaped away as he crash landed on top of the wall. As body parts started to spring up from all over, reattaching the torso, the neck, everything coming back together as Naruto flexed his neck. It was done. A smile came on his face. There was a reason why he was not going all out. He was sending a lot of his power to the clone that was there, and now it was supercharged, Naruto thought. As he looked towards the bleeding Onoki, there was a reason why I sat there and took all the beating that you guys had to ditch out at me. Because I knew once I was free, my retaliation will be 100 times worse. Onoki coughed up blood. And now, you get to watch as I do this. Meanwhile, Kurosaki was jumping downwards as she felt something wrong. She made her way to the epicenter of the blast only to see something down there. Sitting cross, her eyes widened. Several arrows were formed in a span second as she launched them. However, he raised his hand towards her as a blue bubble surrounded her, trapping her. Before she could make a move or even blink, he thrust his hand upwards and she was sent sailing into the sky inside of the blue bubble. The clone then finally opened his eyes before he brought his hand to his chest and slammed it. Trees started to took over his body until his body turned into a long tree that spread up to the sky. And hell came. The ground shook. Onoki felt the earth disturbance and then, boom! Thousands of trees ripped out of the soil. Buildings were toppled. The entire length of the village was surrounded by giant trees that towered over every single building. The ones inside, on the other hand, screams of the innocent and dying could be heard. As there were no normal trees, the edges were so sharp one touch was tearing through flesh. The village was lifted as the giant trees on the perimeter raised it out of the earth. Massive stones came down from the top, crushing houses, crushing buildings. Kurosaki could only watch in utter shock as her entire village was toppled with a single attack. However, it was not done. The roots continued to move before they exploded outwards, revealing a monster. This wasn't just any normal tree. The tree that the clone had turned into was the head, as it started to take shape. A gigantic beast, hundreds of limbs that were those tentacles, ripped itself out of the earth and howled. Its head high up in the sky, it brought it down and smashed through the earth. Its tentacles tearing everything apart. The monster was grotesque and deformed. As Naruto flew and landed on top of its head, two massive tail beast bombs were launched right towards it. However, it extended thousands of tentacles, one making out of the other, 4 out of 1. They branch off. The bombs exploded, but they could not get through. Compared to the size of them, they were small. The Bijous tried to leap away. Onoki was thrown, as he was caught by one of his men. It was the only way, as both tail beasts were yanked and dragged forward. As Naruto sat on the head, his eyes were closed. Sweat was running down his forehead. This was the first time he was doing something like this. The amount of power that he pumped into creating this monster was a lot, an extreme, as he could feel his body actually getting tired. And also, 3 weeks off, him being suspended and well trapped in a place. His body was stuffed. That is why he was continuously rolling his arms and his neck, feeling the power flowing back through them. However, the amount of power that he was using was nothing normal. He had uprooted the entire village, as the place was torn apart. Kurosaki, her hands were at her side. She could break the bubble, however, she was just so shocked, unable to even fathom what she was actually seeing. A part of her lost hope as she saw her village being ravaged and destroyed. The beast roared one more time as it bit down into the 4 and 5 tails. They tried to fight it off as Naruto leaped and landed on the 4 tails before he gripped into it. The black marking spread across his body as Naruto sucked it inside. He jumped towards the 5 as the black marking spread. He sucked it inside as well. As he did not only devour them, he devoured Han and Roshi. He collapsed down to the ground. His monster stopped moving. The branches solidified. They became frozen and stuck. They just stopped moving, right in the epicenter of the broken village. As Naruto landed on the ground, steam was coming from his body. As he felt it, 2 more totems appeared in his eye. There was now 5 in total. As he picked himself up, as steam whipped off his body, the horns in his forehead started to grow a bit as well. His hair also lengthened as well, as he felt the power coursing through him, mingling and twisting. The tail beast's minds were destroyed as their power fueled into his veins. The bubble came down as Kurosaki collapsed out of it, looking up towards a gigantic tree where her village once stood. Onoki could be seen floating over him and his remaining people. Onoki was badly hurt, but yet he was still flying. He was utterly shocked. There was no speech coming from his mouth. As Naruto stood there, he looked towards Kurosaki, who was not responding. Her eyes filled with hate. She clenched her fists. Her body started to tremble. Tears ran down her face. You monster!" she yelled. "That's coming from someone who tortured me for 3 weeks," said Naruto. "But you're probably right. I mean, look at what I did to your home." She created over 1,000 arrows and launched them. It was at that moment Naruto exploded with power. He pushed himself to the very limit that he could. The arrows did not pierce or hit. They bounced off from the force that shook the entire place. The golden aura around him flared up to immense levels. The ground underneath him broke as he moved. His speed was unable to be tracked, especially not by Onoki in his weakened, bleeding state. as he used the rocks to stop his blood flow. However, it was too late as Naruto's hand burst right through his skull. Brain matter and blood flashed everywhere. The two men beside him, Naruto lashed out his hand and grabbed their head and squashed it together. He kicked right through a guy's face, crushing a girl's throat. It was chaos. He grabbed a guy by the face and ran his head through the ground until there was nothing left. Kurosaki jumped forward only for her throat to be grabbed. She was unable to keep up with his speed as she was lifted in the air. As she tried to fight him off, her arrows were unable to pierce him anymore, as Naruto was maxing out veins popping over his body. You have no idea the power I contain. Your village stood no chance in the beginning. I was only toying with you. And now, steam exploded from his body, melting all the people down below as they scream. Some of them escaping by tunneling out using their quirks and moving away, but majority of them were melted away. She screamed as she spat. She tried to claw out his face, but all she was doing was working herself up. Naruto yanked her forward as he whispered in her ear, I told you, I was not going to kill you, but I was going to make you suffer. And I keep my promises. He then dropped her. She was barely breathing by that point because he was squeezing her throat the entire time. Once he did, she collapsed, broken, barely breathing, as Naruto looked down on the chaos that he spread. He then flew off at blinding speeds, leaving the vicinity, leaving them broken and battered. A distance away, he came to a stop as he collapsed out of mid-air. He looked down toward his hands as he had power down. His veins were actually bursting. His body needed a moment to contain the power. His original power was already enough to cause chaos, but the tailed beasts further extending and boosting his power and pushing everything to its max. Soon enough, he will have the power to destroy this entire world. But that was not his goal. He felt so powerful, he felt so untouchable. He wasn't sure that there was anything that could actually stop him now. Even if he were to fight the entire world. He slapped himself across the face. He was losing himself once again. The more he took, the more crazier he seemed to get. He needed to keep it under control. The power inside of him wanted to burst out and took a mind of its own to erupt, but he could not allow that, as he feel it settling in, mingling and twisting and combining with its own. But there was just so much. There was just so much! As Naruto screamed. A large portion of his power was burst out of him at that moment. It was chaotic. Once he was finished, the land was no longer upwards. A trench that was no ending in sight could be seen. The whole landscape had been destroyed, reduced to nothing. As Naruto had eviscerated everything with just flexing out his power. And now he was panting in mid-air, feeling his power inside of him. It was just so much. He had to take control of it though, as he flew off to somewhere safe, somewhere that he could sit down and relax. The tail beast chakra was also getting stronger as well. Because of the experiments done on him, his body was continuously growing. He was getting stronger and stronger. Arriving to a safe, secluded area at a mountainside cave, well, he built it himself by ripping it out with his hands. Naruto sat down and closed his eyes as he meditated. He could feel himself losing control just like when he fought Minato children's. He had lost control then and turned bloodlusted. His mind was not his own, just the pure raw anger and rage. He wanted to destroy and swallow everything, take all quirk and use it to just erase them all. But that was not his goal. No, it was not. A few hours later, Naruto had calmed down enough. He was still in the black pants as he didn't have a shirt on. However, there was one place that he had to go before he starts his quest once again. And that was a hidden rain. Soon enough, people will find out what happened to the village of the hidden stone. He was sure that they will know that that is his marker. as he smirked to himself. He was coming for the others very soon. But guys, be and subscribe right here. Fun things first, and do like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification as they posted. But I'm off now. See you guys soon. Peace.